Yo, what's going on? Mike from Mike Talk Sports. UFC 5 is going to come out at the end of 2023, so without further ado, I thought I would make a UFC 5 career mode wish list, so let's get into it. At number 1, it is going to be training should be optional. So my everlasting thought playing UFC 4 career mode is the training, and that's an absolute shame. So you look at UFC 3, for example, the training goes by so quickly. UFC 2, the training goes by so quickly. In really every single sports game, training is either optional or there's not even an option to practice. Now, I do love the option of training as I think it's very immersive and fun sometimes, and I will get into my second point on how you can make training even better in UFC 5. But for UFC 4, I shouldn't have to spend 30 minutes training just to have a 5-minute fight. That's what really drives people away from UFC 4 career mode, in my opinion. It's just the sheer amount of time it takes to get into a fight. You should be able to bang out a couple fights in a row. You shouldn't have to be able to fight and then 30 minutes later you have another fight. No, you should be able to bang out fights consecutively. Now, I do like a system and an option that Madden has. So in Madden, you can skip the practice mode and you get the baseline amount of points, the bronze badge. Now, if you do load into training, you can get a silver badge or a gold badge depending on how you practice that day. I really like that system for a UFC 5 career mode. You give a player a base amount of points for skipping training, but if they do want to opt into training, maybe they have a championship fight coming up, then that's when you can jump into training, really go hard and get the most amount of training points possible. My number 2 item on the wish list also has to do with training and make training like it is in real life. What do I mean by that, guys? So if you wanted to train boxing, for example, you would throw on headgear, you would throw on boxing gloves, you'd throw on boxing shoes, and you would get into a boxing ring. If you wanted to train jiu-jitsu, guys, you would throw on a gi or you would go into no gi and you would roll. If you wanted to do wrestling, then you'd throw on wrestling shoes and you would hit the mat and you would wrestle. And this, of course, is not the case in UFC 4 career mode. If you hit boxing, you are in an MMA fight. If you hit jiu-jitsu, you're in an MMA fight, etc., etc. So in UFC 5, your training should be specific to the martial art you want to train in that day. If I want to work on my submissions, I shouldn't be eating uppercuts to the face when I'm shooting a takedown. When I'm training wrestling, I shouldn't have my training partner spamming leg kicks. Guys, I can't tell you the amount of times I've loaded in boxing training for the UFC 4 career mode, and 5 seconds into the boxing session, my boxing partner is spamming takedowns. That makes absolutely no sense. You need to make training way more immersive and way more specific to the type of training you want to do. Not only that, but in real life, not all you do is just spar. You have fighters, for example, like Max Holloway, that don't even spar, so you should be able to add game modes like a better heavy box. I know there's the heavy box game mode, but it absolutely sucks. You should add game modes that are specific to the type of training you want. So let's say you do boxing, you should be able to hit mitts. Let's say you do jiu-jitsu, you should have a specific training mode where you start in your opponent's guard and you roll from there. It shouldn't be every single training starts on the feet and it's basically an MMA fight. That makes absolutely no sense. Number 3 is a huge one in my opinion. Number 3, allow the player to allocate skill points before starting the career mode. Something that's drove me absolutely crazy is that no matter what archetype you build, you basically have to start your career mode as a jack of all trade, master of none guy. And this, of course, is not true of MMA whatsoever. If you want to make Alex Pereira, you should be able to make Alex Pereira, a guy who came into MMA as one of the best kickboxers and one of the best MMA strikers on planet Earth that had 0 wrestling and 0 jiu-jitsu. Let's say you want to make a Gordon Ryan career mode. I should make a career mode that at the beginning of the career mode, my guy has maxed out submission skill, so I don't have to work on my submissions for the rest of the career mode. I have to focus on my striking. I have to focus on my wrestling. Let's say I want to make Bo Nickel, for example. It's impossible in every other UFC. In UFC 5, I should be able to allocate all my skills to specific pick points so I can just work on everything else. That is how it is in real life, and that's how it should be in UFC 4. I should be able to, let's say, make Devin Haney in UFC 5 career mode. I should be able to come into the UFC as one of the best boxers, but with absolutely no grappling skill whatsoever, no kickboxing skill whatsoever. So I would love to see that addition to UFC 5. It would make an unlimited amount of archetypes and skill sets that you can make, which makes the replay ability of a UFC 5 career mode significantly better. I don't have 4 mundane, boring, bland archetypes to choose from. You have an unlimited amount of skill sets to choose from if you allow the player to allocate the skill points before starting the career mode. Again, I would love to make a Tyson Fury career mode. I would love to make a Gordon Ryan career mode, but you absolutely can't do that. And it's because you have to pick these stupid archetypes that make your fighters jack of all trade, master of none guys. Number 4 on my list, make longevity much more realistic and make it much more submersive. So let's say in UFC 4, you fight like a maniac every single fight. You are going to have 43 fights in your career. Let's say in UFC 4, you barely take damage throughout your entire career. You don't get knocked down once. You basically fight like Khabib Nurmagomedov, never getting cut or never getting knocked down or wobbled or stunned in your fight. You have to end your career at the same point as if you fought like Justin Gaethje. That makes absolutely no sense. So you look at a game like Fight Night Champion, for example. If you take a significant amount of damage, it is going to affect the rest of your career. A cut you got in the first 5 fights of your career is going to affect you in fight 30. Look at a guy like Nate Diaz, for example. He had a bad cut over his eye in one of his early fights, and for the rest of his career, that scar tissue kept on opening up. This is exactly how it should be in a UFC 5 career mode. It would make it significantly more realistic, and you wouldn't put a stupid artificial cap on the amount of fights you should take. If you fight like Justin Gaethje, you shouldn't be allowed to fight 45 times, but if you fight like Khabib Nurmagomedov, you should be able to fight 50 times. I would love for UFC 5 career mode's longevity to be much more submersive and much more flexible. It should be a bit of a question mark as it is in real life. 5 fights into an MMA career, MMA fighters have no clue when they're going to retire, but you can guarantee at the beginning of your UFC 4 career mode, you guarantee you have 43 fights, and it should absolutely not be that way. Number 5, and the final point on my wish list, make money matter. So there's this weird pretend thing in UFC 4 where, you need to have this social media presence, you need to sell all these pay-per-views, you need to make all of this money. Then the only thing you can use your money for is healing your fighter, which is very easy. You can heal your fighter with literally like $10,000 in UFC 4, which is very easy to make in your first 2 fights. Or you, of course, buy fighters to train with. But again, it is so easy to hit this threshold. All you need to do is fight a couple times and you can train with anyone else. So in NHL, for example, in their career mode, you can use your money to buy a car, buy a bike. And what these items do is actually gives your player an attribute upgrade. So I would love for them to actually incorporate the importance of money in a UFC 5 career mode, because it is just an aspect of the game that is so pointless and it is so useless. Thanks for listening, guys. Let me know in the comment section below what is on your UFC 5 career mode wish list. And if you listen till the end of this video, I really appreciate it. Smack that like button and hit the subscribe if you enjoy the content.